The following episode contains mature subject matter. Listener discretion is advised. It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck, episode 15, the film An Open Secret, and What to Do About Child Sexual Abuse in the Entertainment Industry, Part 2, with Evan Henzi.
It's the Acting Income Podcast with Ben Hauck. Turn your passion into income, Ben will show you how. With all the resources that you need to make it as an actor in an expensive city. To stay balanced and make money, you really can't go wrong with actingincome.com.
Welcome to the Acting Income Podcast. I'm Ben Hauck, and on this podcast we talk about anything and everything that relates to earning an income as an actor. Thank you for listening. This is episode 15, titled The Film An Open Secret, and What to Do About Child Sexual Abuse in the Entertainment Industry, Part 2, with Evan Henzi. Links to items mentioned in this episode are available in the show notes, which you can find at actingincome.com/episode 15. Now, before we start, here's a word from today's sponsor, the Stand-In Handbook. At Stand-In Central, we share what you'll expect if you've just been hired as a stand-in on a film or TV show. And if you're in a rush, people love our popular ebook, The Stand-In Handbook, for a solid foundation on how to be an excellent and effective stand-in. Since 2010, Stand-In Central has been the go-to resource for standing in on film and television projects. To get a deal on the Stand-In Handbook and also our downloadable call sheet cheat sheet, visit standincentral.com/handbook. Today's episode is the second of a two-part series on the Acting Income Podcast on the explosive documentary An Open Secret. It covers the taboo subject of child sexual abuse in the entertainment industry. In the first part of the series, which is episode 14, I interview co-executive producer Matthew Valentinas, who provides keen insight on the development and making of An Open Secret and what you and Hollywood need to do in the face of sexual abuse of child actors. In this episode, I interview former child actor Evan Henzi. Evan was a victim of sexual abuse as a child actor and singer at the hands of his former talent manager, Martin Weiss of Martin Weiss Management. Evan's story is one of several chronicled in the documentary. I'll let him tell his story. But, do let me say something. If you're the victim of sexual abuse, I hope you'll listen very carefully to what Evan has to say. He has some specific instruction about just what to do if you've been a victim. And if you're the parent of a child actor, I hope you'll take Evan's perspective to heart to understand how you can support and protect your child in the face of very real threats in the entertainment industry. At the end of this interview, I'll play the trailer for the film and provide screening information so you can see it in theaters. And now, my interview with Evan Henzi. Evan Henzi, welcome to the Acting Income Podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me.
Evan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. As we've already been hearing, you are one of the subjects in the film An Open Secret that has come out recently, and it covers the sexual abuse of children in the entertainment industry, and you're profiled as one of the victims in the story.
Yeah, correct.
Could you tell me a little bit about your involvement in the film and what were the circumstances that led to your getting involved in the film?
Well, it was in early 2013 that Caitlin Howes, one of the producers, reached out to me. And she saw that I convicted Martin Weiss, who abused me. And she wanted to use my story in the film that they were doing on sexual abuse in Hollywood. At first, I just wanted to be sure that my story would be told correctly. It ended up being something I saw that could help a lot of other people and let me heal at the same time because it was so silent for a long time. So,
who was Martin Weiss to you? What was his relationship to you?
He was my acting manager and my singing manager.
And when did you begin having a professional relationship with Martin, or how old were you, or what year? Do you remember?
Yeah, I was 11 years old. It was March, I believe, of 2005. So it was a whole decade ago.
So what I remember from the film, it looks like the abuse started very early on in your knowing Mr. Weiss.
Yeah, it actually started like the day I met him.
Oh.
It started the day that I met him.
Wow. I wasn't aware of that from the film.
That basketball scene in the film was the first day that I met him.
Oh.
Yeah, so the abuse did not happen that day, but was very close. So, I mean, he was grooming me for maybe 3, 4, 5 months, kept asking me questions like, oh, is this something you'd be into? Would you want to have sex with me? It's a beautiful thing. The first day I met him, he already asked me if I was interested. It was...
You were 11 years old when he asked you this question?
Yes, yeah. I was 11 years old, and it seems like, to me, looking back, that he was really he was really oddly comfortable with asking somebody that question. So it seems to me there must have been other abuse going on before that he was doing with others.
Let me take a step back. How did you meet him?
I met him through my cousin, who also was an actor. So he was signed with Marty for 2 years before I even met him. So, and my cousin's the same age that I am.
So your cousin was represented by him, and then that eventually led to representation. Did you express an interest to your parents that you wanted to do what your cousin was doing?
Yeah, of course. Like, I wanted to act, I wanted to sing. Yeah, definitely very interested. And my parents saw that I could sing, so they're like, why, it would be a great experience for their son.
So did you know that something wasn't right on that first day when you met him and he was asking you these questions? Or did it take some time before you realized?
It took some time before I realized. I knew something was totally off. I didn't know if I should, it wasn't something, I knew it was something that you don't just speak up right away about. Like, I knew it was something he wanted to keep quiet. I mean, he told me over and over again, don't tell anyone that I'm asking you, don't. I just knew, and I got that sense it was secretive. I wasn't stupid, but I think I was just trying to protect myself, and knowing that he was starting to become very close to my family, it was just a really uncomfortable spot. I didn't know how to say anything, and nothing happened yet. So I thought these questions were kind of like, it was like pre-game, and I thought I could get out of it.
As if there would be an end to the questions?
As if there would be an end to all those questions. It would be something, it wouldn't be as deep as it eventually got.
So it worsened over time.
Yeah, definitely.
And it graduated more and more, got more and more severe. What was your psyche like from what you recall as the time went on?
These questions, they started when I was 11. I turned 12 shortly after. It was probably 4 months into these questions and, kind of massaging me and trying to see if this is something that I can get used to so he could take the next step. When
you say massaging, did you mean literally massaging? I think I saw footage of that in the film of him massaging you.
Right, that's the way that he'd get his hands on us kids. So he'd use it as an excuse, like, massaging in general, but I think it was a tactic to just get the kids comfortable with him in a different way. That wasn't just a normal human being conversation. So 4 months into it, I was at his house once, and that was like the first instance of abuse. He shut the door as soon as my mom dropped me off at his house. She was thinking we were going out over acting sides for an audition, and he shut the door and he turned to me. I was sitting on the couch, and he said, "Okay, pull down your pants." And I looked at him and I said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he looked back over at me and said, "No, pull down your pants," because he was saying, "You told me that we would, that you'd be into it eventually." Because I used that as an excuse to get out of it before, is when he'd ask me these questions, like, "Do you want to do anything with me?" I'd say later, because now wasn't working. So if I just say no, I had to kind of lead him on to just get out of the situation at that one point. So then when I was at his house for like the first or second time, he, I consider that full on like force, because I said no, and he took off my pants and held his arm over my chest. And that was the first full instance of abuse. And he, yeah.
So he pinned you down, essentially.
Yeah, he pinned me down, yeah.
Is it hard to relive those memories now?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I appreciate your sharing that to give some sense of what this was like. So it got worse and worse. When did you decide that
I need to do something about this? Did you come to that point at some point?
Yeah, it was when I was, I thought about it when I was like 17 years old, that this could be associated with the term abuse, because I started, in school in like health class, I'd find out like, oh yeah, sexual abuse is a thing. That's like when I was in ninth grade at 14 years old, but I never associated that term with what happened to me. And I just didn't for some reason. And when I turned 17, I started realizing that this was really wrong, and it was the reason for why I was really shy and reserved, and why I didn't have maybe a lot of friends. And it wasn't until I was 18, and it sounds really corny, but I saw an Oprah show of about 200 men holding up signs in the audience, pictures of them when they were young, when they were first abused. So 200 men in her audience stood up and like opened up to the fact that they were sexually abused. And I realized, oh my God, yeah, guys go through this too. Guys go through sexual abuse. And I started realizing that it was really bad what he did to me, and all the pain started coming up at that point. And definitely a lot of confusion. But then it was in November of 2011 when I tape recorded him, and that was spontaneous at that point, because I thought I'd start my life in college or something. And yeah, I don't know. I just came forward right away. I just knew I had to do it.
I remember in the film, there's a recording, an audio recording that you made of him when you made a trip to McDonald's. I was curious in watching what precipitated that. So it sounds like you just spontaneously did that. It wasn't there wasn't any strategy in trying to do that. You just wanted to get it on record, or was there a whole, operation involved in trying to verify what he had done?
Well, a whole operation in my own head.
Oh, really?
I mean, it was like 8:00 at night, and I just kind of told myself, look, I want to say this now, but I need proof, because it was so ingrained in my family. He knew all my family members. He was up for every single family birthday and Christmas, and I just thought, you know what, I'll try to get the tape. If it doesn't work, then I'll just say what happened to me. But I went to his house. I told my parents I was going out to a movie with friends, and instead I went to his house, and I turned on the recorder, and I had it in my jacket pocket, and we went over to McDonald's because it was an excuse to kind of get out of the house and be like one-on-one in the car and maybe talk for hours, and he doesn't have any interruptions like a phone call or anything. So yeah, I got him into the car, and I taped it, and he admitted on the tape. So then I brought that tape to my parents the next day, and I told them what happened. And then we went to the cops the day after that, and the whole process started with going to the DA and asking if she'd take the case, which she did. And yeah, he was arrested about 2 weeks later.
Oh, it was that fast.
Yeah, it was that fast. But I mean, still, we actually had Thanksgiving dinner, with him after my parents knew what he did to me, because the investigators asked us to keep it silent that this investigation was going on against him, because they wanted to get more victims out, and because it was so close to all my family members, and it was around that time in November and all the holiday seasons and everything. So those 2 weeks were really hard, because we still saw him and knew this investigation was going on, and then eventually he was arrested. So
you took my breath away. I mean, you have a smile on your face right now. I know it's not, there's no lack of gravity of the situation, mm-hmm. but it's just like that my heart started pounding. The 2 weeks, and you knew that, and you I know how much of a family friend he was at least characterized as, and you just verified mm-hmm. that. And your mom said when she heard about these things that she nearly fainted. At least she said that in the film. I can't imagine what your parents and yourself were going through when that happened. A Thanksgiving dinner of all time.
I know. Yeah, that was really, really hard.
So that was kind of an operation in that respect.
Yeah, so it became an operation afterwards. So we knew for 2 weeks that we couldn't say anything and that they were going to try to find other victims or do background checks. I don't really know what their investigative strategies were, but yeah, we just couldn't say anything till he was arrested.
So it eventually led to a court case with him where charges were filed against him. Is that correct?
Yeah, 8 counts.
8 counts. And how soon did that happen after the arrest? Do you recall?
I think about 3 days after he was arrested is when he went to the court and they arraigned him.
All right. And then he served some time in jail as well.
Right. Then he was serving 6 months in jail leading up to hopefully a pretrial. But in that process of waiting for the pretrial, we came up with a plea deal. I mean, my DA, the people of California, came up with a plea deal. Because it's not me at that point going after Marty. I was anonymous at that point. So the state keeps you anonymous in California. I don't know about other states, but in California, you're anonymous if you're a victim. And it's the DA going after Martin Weiss. So, yeah, they came up with a plea deal, and unfortunately, he only got 1 year in jail. But he has to register as a convicted sex offender for the rest of his life. So I thought that was at least good, because there's a lot of cases that are thrown out, especially around sexual abuse. So it's sad.
He was no longer working as a manager after he got out of jail. Is that right? I'm not really sure. Do you happen to know?
I've been told that he is still working for another manager. So kind of underground. He's still working with kids.
Oh, that's you're not totally sure about that. You're
No, I'm not totally sure, but I think somebody had an investigator found out.
There was a point of confusion. Maybe you can help straighten this out for me. At the end of the film, it says that your cousin is working still with him, at least as of when the film came out in 2014. Is that your understanding? Is that the case? Are they still working together?
Yeah, they have a production company called Two Weiss Guys Management.
And your cousin's last name is the same as his. So I remember I was confused in watching that, whether there was a connection. Could you tell me whether there is a connection, a family connection between the two?
No, there's no family connection. But that's how Darien became his client, because Marty found it awesome that they had the same last name. So that's how they got into even being represented by Marty. So that's how they got their business together. So no family relationship. It was just coincidence.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Though I am a bit troubled, and I think many people watching this might be troubled too, that here's someone, your family member, who's regarded as a cousin in the film, and you're revealing to me is basically the same age. He's still working with this convicted sex offender. Is that an issue for you or your family or for your cousin? How does that even work out? Do you have any sense?
I am just so confused by it, because either he was a victim of Marty himself, or he feels bad for Marty and he's still doing business with him. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But yeah, it does trouble me a lot that I feel like there's certain family members who did not believe me, and then there's a lot of family members I've gotten closer with because they did believe me. And so, you lose some people and you gain some, but it's just, yeah, it's pretty sad. It sucks. Yeah.
I hear you. Your parents were interviewed for the film. Was it difficult for them to get involved in the film?
Yeah, it was, but I think, I think it was difficult for them to talk about it and to really, face the reality that this happened to my son. So it was hard for them, but they were really supportive of doing it right away. I mean, they wanted to do it. It was just a hard process emotionally.
Well, I'll say as an audience member, while I don't have kids, I'm thankful for them also sharing their story and showing that perspective, because this is a crime that not only affects children, but it affects parents, at least from how I see it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the parents are forced to protect their children. I mean, it's almost like in some respects you say the child should protect himself or herself, but that sounds somewhat ridiculous. The responsibility then goes to the parent. But in these situations, you have child predators who pull their children away from parents, and that's when the predation happens. What advice would your parents have for other parents in this industry? Can you speak for them in some respects? Have you learned anything from them about what your parents might say to other parents of child actors?
Yeah, I think they'd say, make sure your child is in your, is in your eyes all the time, especially if they're child actors or singers. Make sure that they're not in the audition rooms alone. Make sure that you see the warning signs and educate yourself about these warning signs. Because I think, there were a lot of trails that Marty left. Like, he was massaging us. He had a minivan with the back seats taken out of it. So that's a big red flag. He made comments, sex jokes with the kids. And I think my parents are just trusting people. And I mean, we're Swiss people. We're very trusting. We want to believe everyone has the best intentions. And especially, we don't want to, say, oh yeah, we think you're a pedophile because you look like this or you kind of do that. But I think there are some warning signs, and I think it's about educating yourself on sexual abuse, and especially like what to do when your child would disclose that, or if you would ever get that feeling that something's off here.
What regrets have they expressed to you in their parenting? I'm guessing they felt in some respects at fault. I don't blame them necessarily in this case, but I'm guessing they've expressed regrets. Do you have a sense of what regrets they have?
Well, I mean, they're saying that they didn't know what was going on at all, which I believe. Like, I don't think they knew. But I think they do regret that there was not more, that they weren't more informed, that they didn't inform themselves more about what the negatives of coming into the business, and to really understand that, I don't know. That would be a question for them, honestly.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Well, here's a related question on the flip side. What did they do especially well for you once you finally did start coming out about this?
Yeah, well, they said, let's go to the cops right away. So they weren't ashamed that this abuse happened to me. They were like full, because some, families want to keep it close and they don't want to reveal this. And my parents were right away like, yeah, let's go to the cops. Let's arrest him. He's the bad guy here, not you. So they made that very clear. And no, they were very supportive. My dad came with me to every court hearing. He took off work. He was there by my side. And yeah, they did a lot of good.
You can't speak for every child, obviously, but how important is parental support for any child who alleges abuse?
It is so important. It is so important because children do not have the means to just leave the house and have their own lives. They have no money. A lot of children don't drive. There's not a way. You're like stuck in that family home. So if you don't have good parents who won't believe you or who don't want to find you therapy or support, don't want to help you, I just don't know what you do. It's insane. So that I think I'm hoping that we could highlight organizations out there that, for kids who don't have good parents, where they could reach out and say, yes, I was abused. What can I do? Where can I get help? How can I get out of this terrible situation?
Do you know of organizations that can help child actors who might be in this situation?
Well, I mean, there aren't many, I think, that help specifically child actors, but I know that Biz Parents is an organization that started, they're one of the few helping child actors come forward about sexual abuse and informing parents, especially, about the negatives and the realities, not just the negatives, the realities of what can happen in the entertainment business. So I think that's one organization that if somebody went through something terrible, they reach out to them. They don't have the family support. There's a way to help these kids and get these guys convicted. And hopefully that's the case.
And that company is Biz Parents. For those listening, I put a link to Biz Parents in the show notes so you can look them up if you're listening and you want to know more about Biz Parents. And in the film, Anne Henry, I believe she's a co-founder of Biz Parents. She's featured a lot in the film, and she talks about her own experiences around these kinds of things. We're getting close to the end of the interview, Evan, and I want you to have a chance to speak to someone who might be currently struggling with sexual abuse, ongoing sexual abuse, or past sexual abuse that's been unaddressed. What would you say to that audience member who's privately struggling with this?
Oh, wow. I would say it's not your fault. I just say, come forward. Come forward. I know it, there's a lot of pain with revealing something like this, but it has really been the best thing in my life to be able to tell the truth and to not feel like I can't say anything in my life about myself. And even if it was something extremely negative that I went through, it doesn't have to define you. This is something to just move on from. There's a lot of, I think, unaddressed pain that can pop up later. I mean, it's happened with me now. I'm in therapy, and I'm realizing it's starting to really affect me what he did to me. And there's a lot of pain, I'm starting to realize I was just a kid, and that this adult really came into my life and made me do things that were just despicable. And that shame should not be directed towards us victims. It should be the perpetrator's fault. It should be it's their problem, not ours, and we can get the help that we want. And there are people out there that will help. And it's, I think it's a matter of like being the best people we can be in this life. And for me, that's being able to speak every part of you. And yeah, I just hope that people who listen to this interview or watch the film and who have been sexually abused can say, yeah, I understand what I'm saying. Like, I want to be able to speak the truth and do the best in my life as well.
The film does a pretty good job, I think, as far as showing kind of what you expressed, that someone might have the experience when they're young and it's much later in their life. I mean, it could be a few years later that it starts to resurge in their life and causes problems. I don't know what the mechanism for that is, but it seems also then to suggest, tell me something different if you believe differently, that the sooner you, who is dealing with sexual abuse, address this issue, call attention to it, the better you aid your future life.
I believe that. Yeah. Like I would tell my younger self to come forward immediately. Like as soon as those questions started at age 11, I would have said, like, I wish I was educated enough to say like that was wrong. So it's really hard to say like, Evan, come forward as soon as you hear these questions. I mean, there's so much manipulation. This is something that kids and adults who have experienced it can come forward when they're ready to come forward, and when they, when they can understand that it was not their fault. And I think when they can understand that I can find out, what was done to me, because there should be nothing that you have to keep a secret.
So if you're 11 years old and you're listening, if you're 12, if you're 13, if you're 14, if you're 15, if you're 16, if you're 17, you're 18 or beyond, if you've experienced sexual abuse, Evan would recommend coming forward about it now.
Yes.
Evan, what are you looking forward to right now? I know in the end of the film, there's a song that's playing that, you co-wrote and you're singing on it, right?
Yes.
Are you still doing music? And what are you looking forward to now? What's going on in your life now?
Yeah, I'm not giving up on music. That's my life. It's my soul, my heart. I want to do that for the rest of my life. So I was lucky to, it was a group of guys that got together and wrote that song called A Call to Arms. And it was with Snow Patrol, which is a band that I've been listening to since I was young.
Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was such a great experience, and I'm so glad that they're supportive of kids coming forward. And I think there's a lot of power to, we can be powerful people. We're not just victims. So I think it's awesome.
Evan Henzi, is there anything else you want to share with the Acting Income podcast about this story?
I want to say that, we're trying to create that support that you're looking for. So all, you guys who have been through it, Like that's what we're here to do. So just watch for the next year or two. We're really going to do a lot. So we're just hoping kids will feel comfortable and adults can feel comfortable to come forward.
I hope so too. This is a child issue as well as a parent issue as well as an industry issue. Evan Henzi, thank you so much for coming on the Acting Income podcast.
All right, thank you. All right, bye.
As I said earlier, the first episode in this two-part series is an interview with Matthew Valentinus, a co-executive producer for An Open Secret. If you haven't listened yet, it's episode 14, which you can find at actingincome.com/episode 14. And if you've been the victim of sexual abuse in the entertainment industry, the show notes for Evan's episode will point you in several helpful directions. The show notes are available at actingincome.com/episode 15. I've also included a link to the Oprah Winfrey episode Evan refers to, as well as a link to the Biz Parents Foundation. Finally, here's the trailer for An Open Secret.
I think every little kid dreams about being famous and being in movies.
This is California. This is where you make it. This is where it all starts.
You'll get signed by a label. You can star on Disney Channel. You know, what kid wouldn't want that, right? I remember you asked me if I ever did anything with the guy before. I was not interested at 12.
You're not recording this, right?
Look like an angel.
Hollywood doesn't have any system in place to protect anybody, and children are way down on that list.
Children need management just like everybody else.
Walk like an angel.
Everybody liked him.
He became part of the family.
In the beginning, it was happy, and then things started changing.
Oh, you talk like an angel.
They pick on people who they know will be victims.
You have an adult who is manipulating the child.
Look like an angel.
Getting, hired on the spot like that. That had never happened before. It was obvious that something was going on.
You fool me.
The party made me feel uncomfortable. There were lots of drugs available, and there were young teenage boys.
I remember being scared.
He just told me this is what you have to do.
A number of boys told me to point the gun at them just like that.
He said, "Do you not understand the power I have?"
You're the devil in disguise.
I remember sitting in my room and crying my eyes out.
He said, "What would you do? That happened to me."
A lot of investors completely denied that anything was going on.
Clearly, the studio didn't want an investigation.
I hated when you tried to have me sleep in your bed and touch me.
I don't know anything about that.
There will always be a steady stream of kids who want to be famous.
We're absolutely talking about the tip of an iceberg.
It wasn't uncommon, let's put it that way.
An Open Secret will be at Cinema Village in New York City starting July 3rd, 2015. In Los Angeles, starting July 17th, An Open Secret will be at the Laemmle Music Hall on Wilshire. For more screenings of An Open Secret, visit anopensecretfilm.com. And that's the show. This episode was sponsored by the Stand-In Handbook from Stand-In Central. Download the ebook right now at standincentral.com/handbook. The show notes for this episode are available at actingincome.com/episode 15, where you can also leave a comment on this episode. You can also find Acting Income on Twitter and Facebook. Rate and review this podcast on iTunes by visiting actingincome.com/iTunes. Pitch an episode idea by visiting actingincome.com/pitch. And if you'd like to sponsor an episode, check out actingincome.com/advertise. I'm Ben Hauck. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And for more information, as always, check out actingincome.com.